All right, which best describes uniformitarianism? All right, uniformitarianism is just a fancy way of saying things work now the way they used to work, and they used to work the way they work now. Okay, so uniformitarianism just means that geologic processes work now the same way they worked forever. Right? So a volcanic eruption now happens for the same reason that volcanic eruptions happened during the dinosaur ages. Okay? The greenhouse effect works now the same way it worked during past climates. So you look at those answers, which one of those fits? The time it takes for erosion to occur has changed since Earth first formed. That's the opposite of uniformitarianism. Okay? Because uniformitarianism says erosion happens at the same rate now that it happened back then. So no. The movement of continents no longer occurs because of changes in ocean currents. First of all, ocean currents don't move the continents. Okay? Secondly, no, the continents moved 1 million years ago, so they're still moving now. That's what uniformitarianism says. The process that shaped the earth continue as they have since the earth formed. Well, that sounds good. The formation of rock layers has slowed. No, because geologic processes work the same now that they did back then. So C is the answer. Okay. Many infectious diseases have been nearly eliminated worldwide. Why should global studies of infectious disease continue? So why in the world should we continue to study these infectious diseases if we've nearly wiped them out? Okay? All infectious disease organisms are fatal. No. The cold generally isn't fatal. The flu isn't fatal all the time. It is. A lot of people die from it, especially older people or maybe young people or people with chronic conditions. But you can't say they're all fatal. Athlete's foot is infectious. It's a fungus that spreads from person to person, especially when they share shoes or socks. Okay? So that's an infectious disease. It's not fatal. Infectious diseases are resistant to any form of treatment. No. Strep throat is infectious, but we can treat it with antibiotics. All infectious disease organisms have the ability to mutate, adapt, and survive. That's true. All infectious diseases are caused by viruses that do not respond to antibiotics. That's false because, again, athlete's foot is infectious, and that's a fungus. Strep throat is caused by bacteria. So that is obviously not true. Okay? This is the way my brain works, people. If it says all, then that means all. So if you can think of one exception, it's wrong. Okay? However, all infectious organisms have the ability to mutate. Even viruses. Sure, yeah. So that's got to be the best answer. The other three are just complete not right. Okay? So it has to be C. 53. Scientists have been able to cause some bacteria to produce insulin. In which area of science would these scientists most likely work? Okay, so they took a gene and inserted it into a living thing. All right? So, if you took part of a living thing and used technology to put it into another living thing, what would you call that? You tell me. 54. If a company genetically modifies corn to produce an odor that repels insects, which best describes how the corn was modified? Okay? So again, you change the genes. Use technology to change the genes of a living thing. What would you call that? Which best represents the flow of energy within an aquatic ecosystem? All right, so we know most food chains start with the sun, and then they have to go to a producer. All right, now all of these include sunlight. Sunlight has to be the first thing, though, so these are wrong. The next thing has to be a producer. Insects are consumers, not producers. So then the answer has to be algae. Or, I'm sorry, the answer has to be D, because it goes sunlight, producer, consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. If a bat, an alligator, and a bird evolved from a common ancestor, what is most likely to be concluded? All right, so they have similar anatomical structures. Okay, so while they're, like, example, if you look at a bat wing, an alligator leg, especially a front leg, and a bird wing, what you'll see is there's one bone, then there's two bones, then there's some little wrist bones and some palm bones, and then there's some finger bones. Okay? Now, obviously, they're longer or shorter. In a bat wing, let's say this is the bat, you have the upper bone, then you have the two bones, and then you have the wrist bones, and then the finger bones are elongated, and then skin is stretched between them, and that's what makes the bat wing. Okay? So, yeah, they have similar anatomical structures. Recent changes in a species can be found in the upper layers of rock. This provides a link between two scientific ideas. So, the upper layers of rock, right? So we say recent changes, so that's evolution. And then recent and upper layers, that indicates the law of superposition. The idea that the top layer is the youngest. All right, so then C would be the answer. Which of these would most likely happen to a species that is not able to adapt to a changing environment? All right, so here's the thing. Let's say we have some rabbits, okay, and their environment, they're used to living in snow, so white rabbits blend in really easily, right? But I know it looks like I'm doing just random stuff, but trust me for a second. All right. So as their ecosystem becomes more and more green, okay, then what's going to happen is these white rabbits are going to stand out like a sore thumb. And they're going to get picked off by predators much more quickly as their environment becomes more and more green. Okay? So, one of two things happens. Either there's enough genetic diversity that some rabbit has better camouflage and then is able to survive and it passes on those traits. That's natural selection leading to evolution, change in the species over time. The other possibility, if there isn't enough genetic variation in this population of rabbits, they go extinct. Okay. Resistance to disease, no, that has nothing to do with it. Species would change the environment, no, because they're rabbits, not humans. Humans like doing stuff like that, for better or worse. Species would develop mutated cells, no, so they would most likely become extinct of those 4 choices. A runner is preparing for a long race. Which would provide the highest level of energy to the runner? Carbohydrates. Okay? Yeah. Last one. Why are digestion and respiration important to the body? Well, digestion breaks food down. Into molecules. That's what digestion does. It takes this hamburger you eat or the salad you eat and it breaks it down into molecules. Okay? Respiration converts sugar to ATP, which of course is the fuel the cell actually runs on. So, but your cell can't convert bread into ATP. It can only convert sugar into ATP. So the bread has to be broken down into simple sugars like glucose. And then the cell, the mitochondria of the cell, converts the sugar, the glucose, into ATP. They store food? No. They build muscle and bone? No. They control the production of hormones? No. So D is the answer. They help provide energy needed for body functions. All right. So that's it. That's the 2019 released EOG. Most of the questions, I didn't tell you the answer. I gave you enough information that if you didn't know the answer, you should be able to figure it out. If you're still not sure, please check in with me. All right. Have a good day. Stay curious.